Welcome to Quality Time with MoreSteam. I am your host, Dan Swartout, and today we are lucky enough to be joined by the Director of Product EngineRoom here at MoreSteam, Karina Dubé. Karina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan.
So excited to have you here, and especially because you have such an impressive background. And I want to talk about EngineRoom, and I want to talk about using statistics in continuous improvement. But before we do that, I want to talk about you and your impressive background. First of all, you were the valedictorian of your class at St. Mary's High School, correct?
That is correct.
What was that like? It's not often you talk to a valedictorian.
St. Mary's is a great place to learn and be educated. And I grew up in Saugus, Massachusetts. I went to school in Lynn, Massachusetts pretty much my whole life. And so St. Mary's was a great experience and loved learning a lot, loved school. And so I'm glad that it paid off in the end.
And that's all in the Boston area, correct?
Yes, all in the Boston area, correct.
You excelled in science, you excelled in math, but that wasn't it, because you won the Harvard Book Award in 2010. How did you win that? What were the qualifications?
I think it was basically you were the top student at your school. It's actually like a red hardbound book, and it had a bunch of essays from Harvard graduates and actually Radcliffe graduates from before it was integrated co-ed. And so it's the book award that they provided. So that was lucky and fortunate for that too.
Wow, impressive. Well-rounded, though, as well. You were on the volleyball team where you were a co-captain, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You were involved in theater. What were some of the productions you were involved in?
I did a lot of musicals throughout high school. And so we did Wizard of Oz, then we did Alice in Wonderland, then it was Footloose, and then it was Godspell, all 3 years. And then all 4 years of high school. And then I also did the drama club for a little while.
You were a very busy student in high
Yes,
school.
I was.
How different is Footloose, the musical, from the movie?
Footloose, the musical is it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same. I remember watching the old version when I was in Footloose at the time. I know that there's a new version of Footloose, but I haven't seen that one yet. The old one's pretty much the same. What's different is like Footloose, the movie doesn't actually sing the songs. Like, it's not a musical in that sense. Whereas all of the songs that are popular in that movie are sung by the characters in the actual musical. So I think that's pretty neat.
Footloose, Let's Hear It for the Boy,
Yes.
Holding Out for a Hero, all
Yeah.
those songs.
All those are actually in the musical in that case.
As a Gen Xer, that really appeals to me, Karina.
It's really good. It was very fun.
So after high school, you then went to Notre Dame, where you earned a Bachelor of Science in electrical engineering, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Why did you choose Notre Dame?
It was a big family school. So my dad went to Notre Dame. I also had several uncles and a couple cousins who went to Notre Dame. I actually was choosing when I was graduating high school, between Dartmouth College in New Hampshire and Notre Dame. And there was just a part of me that was like, someone would be in my seat at the Notre Dame football games. And so like, that's kind of what solidified it for me to go out to South Bend.
And so then from Notre Dame, you did something very interesting. You got a Master of Science degree in interactive media from University College Cork in Ireland. How did that come about?
So I graduated from Notre Dame with a degree in electrical engineering. But by the end of my career there at Notre Dame, I was thinking that electrical engineering really wasn't going to be my path. So actually, after my junior year and after my internship with MoreSteam, I was looking at courses at Notre Dame to do computer science. And so one of my goals was, well, how do I get more experience in computer science if this is the way my career is going to go? At the same time, I also had I wasn't able to study abroad when I was in undergrad. And I always loved Ireland. And so one of my thoughts was, well, maybe I could go study abroad in Ireland while doing something with computer science. So I literally Google Masters of Computer Science in Ireland. And that's how I ended up finding my program. And so I applied. and I got in. And so after that, I decided to go, and I ended up going to Ireland for my master's.
How long were you in Ireland?
About 13 months. So it was a shorter program, but it was great.
That is fantastic. And then from there, you entered the world of data analytics, continuous improvement, operational excellence here at MoreSteam. And I want to talk about that a little bit. As we talk about the world of continuous improvement, can you explain how statistical tools are used to identify process improvements in continuous improvement projects?
So there are lots of different ways that statistical tools are used. A popular one is the statistical process control. So control charts, the idea that if you take a measurement over time, you can see whether or not that process is in control, if it is within a certain number of standard deviations from the mean. And then from there, when you want to make a change that either reduces the variation within that process or brings the mean down because you need something to be faster, or brings the mean up if you need something to have higher quality, you can use something like control chart to track those changes and make measurements of those changes over time. Otherwise, there's basic data analysis. So you can do your bar charts, your trend charts, any of those type of initial exploratory analysis tools to try to understand from your data what kind of problems you're having and use that for problem identification. Once you've done your Pareto charts, your bar charts, things like that, that's when you might go into, maybe you are trying to measure something and you need to make sure that your measurement system is going well. So from there, you would go into your measurement system analysis. We've got things like gauge R&Rs, attribute agreement analyses, and those depend on what you're trying to measure. But you're using statistics in those cases to confirm whether or not different people or different ways of measuring are going to be consistent. So there's lots of ways that statistics are used in process improvement.
As you are in a project and you're looking to start a project and you're engaged in a project, there's all sorts of data to choose from, all sorts of data to analyze. How do you prioritize what data to analyze, what data to collect? What are some of the steps that you look for to make that prioritization?
I think I'm going to start by saying you want to brainstorm first what different things you might want to be measuring as they relate to whatever North Star main metric that you are trying to measure. So there's probably a whole thread we can go down about picking your main North Star metric. And maybe that's where we're talking about for prioritizing. Once you have that North Star metric, then you have to start looking at, well, what are all the different things that could be driving that North Star metric? And that's where you start brainstorming maybe some root cause analysis type things, whether it's using your fish bones, whether it's using your root cause trees. It might just be you coming up what kinds of numbers will roll up into affecting the top number. Maybe I'm looking at the tension of something. I might
Right.
be interested in what the setting of the machine is and also the temperature of the material that I'm using, right? So maybe there are some things that you anticipate are going to be directly affecting that main metric you care about. And then from there, you can start finding if those are available. If they're easy to measure, that's probably a criteria to go after. If it's difficult to measure, then you might start looking at proxies or other types of operational definitions to try to get a measurement that roughly matches what you're trying to measure. Um, so, as far as prioritizing, try to get what's easy first and then go into a little bit deeper when you need to.
Obviously, statistics are such an important part of continuous improvement and Lean Six Sigma. And EngineRoom is the data analysis software available from MoreSteam. Can you describe some of the key features and benefits of EngineRoom? Maybe give us an overview of what EngineRoom is all about.
Yeah. So, EngineRoom is an all in one toolbox for all things quality and continuous improvement. And it has mainly four families of tools within EngineRoom. You've got your documentation tools, diagramming tools, statistical analysis, and modeling tools. So those four families of tools comprise pretty much all of the different artifacts that you'll be creating during a continuous improvement project. If we start with our documentation tools, that's largely your project management tools. So things like project charters, Gantt charts, your RACI matrices, things like that. Then you can move into your diagramming tools. We like our flow charts, we like our value stream maps, and so you can do those in EngineRoom as well. The third type, like you mentioned, Dan, was our statistical analysis tools. So all of those things that I had mentioned before, your basic graphs, measurement system analysis, control charts, and it goes up more advanced than that as well. Regression, design of experiments, all of those are available in EngineRoom as well. And then finally, we have process modeling, which is our tool called Process Playground. It is a discrete event simulation tool that is built directly into EngineRoom, and it's all available online.
Discrete event simulation is pretty fascinating. Could you explain exactly what that is and how Engine Room can help you with that process?
So, discrete event simulation is now I'm not the expert on this one, Dan, but I know enough to be dangerous. So, the discrete event simulation is a way of describing processes that is based on point in time events. So, the idea is that I pick up a piece of paper, then I put down the piece of paper. I make an order for fries at a fast food restaurant, then I receive the order from the fast food. So these are kind of events and communication that happens, and you can use that type of communication to build out simulations. So, Process Playground works in this fashion. You have different blocks that you use to build out your process, very similar to a value stream map. And in the background, you have the different blocks talking to each other in order to pass different items in your process through. And that is how it produces a simulation of real life processes.
You're building out the simulation. From there, how would you use Process Playground as a tool?
I'd say that Process Playground is generally used more for when you want to make changes to a process. So, at first, you are going to be doing a lot of data gathering because you want to make sure that the model that you build in Process Playground correctly matches real life. And if you are able to get something that is accurate to real life, then you can have some confidence that when you make changes to the process, those will also accurately reflect real life. And so the idea that you will want to build out your process, but before you officially call this model done, you'll want to go to your real process, collect the data, understand how long things are taking, what is the rate of demand of things coming in? Where are you seeing your bottlenecks? And once you have all of that information, use that to transfer it into Process Playground, make a model that makes sense for real life. And then now you can go in there and make your tweaks and see how you can improve your processes based on that baseline real life matching data.
Engine Room is a very visual software. Visually speaking, what are some of the reporting capabilities in Engine Room that help the user of the software interpret the data, use the tool within their continuous improvement projects? How does that happen in a visual and reporting sense?
So I've got a couple of different visual pieces to EngineRoom. The first is we have a pretty unique interface as far as how do you select which data goes into a what we call a study, into an analysis. We introduced a drag and drop functionality that enables you to select your data easier and add them to your analyses a lot easier than some other tools that are out there. Beyond that, when we're looking at our data analysis and data visualization, we have everything from scatter plots, box plots, bar charts, and you can do your drag and drop and show your data there. Otherwise, for our more advanced statistical tools, we offer things like conclusions. So if you wanted to interpret a hypothesis test, we would provide a conclusion right at the top based on some of the criteria you provided for us. We do similar things with our process capability tool. So we wanted to make it easy for people to understand what this tool is meant to do, even if you're a beginner or if you're coming back to this tool after a long period of time. So we have called out at the top the conclusion, is your process capable or not based on the criteria that you provided for us. We also have a quick reference table, which pulls out all of the necessary information as a quick place to be able to understand what's going on without having to know exactly where to find it in kind of the more organized sections. Visuals also make it easy for people who are trying to put things out. So we've got different ways of annotating your graphs. There's different ways of changing colors on your graphs, all things like that to make it easier for people to understand what their data is doing.
Anytime, Karina, you're using a statistical analysis tool, you've got to be sure that the data is correct, that there's integrity to the data. What are some of the things that EngineRoom does to ensure that data integrity?
We have a couple of tools that are available for looking into that. So within our data editor, we have a couple of data cleansing tools. We are able to identify outliers. We're able to identify inconsistent data. If you have a column of mostly numbers and then you add a B in there somewhere and you can't find it, EngineRoom will detect that for you. You're able to click on a button and that'll take you directly to where your data is inconsistent. The third way of data cleansing would be to use the missing data detector, where if you have a cell that doesn't have data in it, we will take you directly to that and you can fix it up how you see fit. Otherwise, we have a lot of checks within our tools just to make sure that your data is working correctly. For example, in our hypothesis testing wizard, we have the ability to detect whether your data is normal or not. And so we will flag certain things like that while you're going through it. Our process capability tool will actually say whether or not your data are in control and whether your data is normal. And if that is the case, then you can say that your process capability statistics are going to be accurate or usable, because if those two criteria are not met, then your process capability is not really valid. So we try to put a lot of these checks in there and draw them to the user's attention so that they know what is going on with their data.
Karina, as you talk about statistics, engine room, continuous improvement, I think back on your background, electrical engineering at Notre Dame, valedictorian of your high school, Master of Science in interactive media. You really weren't a part of the continuous improvement world during those phases of your life so much, but now you're really immersed in it. What has that been like? And how have you been able to take some of those tools and use them as the product manager of Engine Room or as a software developer or even in your personal life?
I love the math part of continuous improvement. I
Uh-huh.
find it very fascinating. The fact that you want to use measurements to make things better is useful. I think that kind of goes a lot with my engineering background for sure, where you're looking at math and something isn't quite shaking out the way you expected, but reworking the math or testing out different things is how you make improvements to a circuit, for example. So it's a combination of math, a combination of testing things out to make things work in real life. I definitely was thrown into this world coming out of college and as my internship, and that I started off as a software developer. I was really interested while I was doing software development in design, and I was really interested in how do you make software easy to use for people. And so that led me to do more of a designer role at MoreSteam. And I was a main designer on Process Playground. And so I was able to hopefully rework it into something that is easy for people to use. And then from there, I became the product manager. And then, like I said, the product manager role really involves a lot more of that metrics and measuring and figuring out, did this change cause some metric to move up or down? And if so, is that statistically significant? How much of a sample size do I need to get in order to confirm or say that this particular change has made an improvement in our product. So it's kind of all over the place in that process improvement is another way of just measuring things and making improvements on them. Products work very similarly. You have measurements that you want to make and metrics you want to hit with when you're building a product, and you want to do different experiments to understand how to make those better.
I imagine you're using science, you're using math, but you're also creating. And as one of the persons responsible for creating Process Playground, Engine Room, what is it like as a creator when you hear feedback about Engine Room, about Process Playground, when you see people using the tools in the real world to affect improvements in their organizations and in their lives? What's that mean to you as a creator?
That's the most important thing, Dan. The most important thing is when you're a creator is you want people to enjoy what you create and use it well and use it in the world. And so we're trying to build out a very useful tool for people to build things, make things better in the world. So I've appreciated getting to hear a lot of the stories of people who have used Engine Room or Process Playground in the world. For example, we had a hospital who was trying to make improvements and they used Process Playground for that. I love hearing feedback from any types of users, positive or negative. I like hearing the negative feedback too. We always want our own continuous improvement. And so hearing the negative feedback means that we have things to improve. We have different ways to make the software more useful to people. And we take that all to heart and we hopefully are building out new things that people are excited to use or find very useful and easy and understandable.
As a creator, as a software developer, as a programmer, of course, you're using science, but you're also using, to an extent, art. Am I right? Is there an art to it?
One of my favorite programming things is front end development, which is really the view of the front of, or it's the piece that people actually interact with. And I always find that fun to like build that part of an interface. I haven't done it in a long time, unfortunately, but it is something I enjoy. But the art of it is definitely difficult because sometimes there's not right answers.
Right.
And so you're going to be creating things that, like any art, some people are going to receive one way and some people are going to receive another way. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And so
Hmm.
sometimes you build something that you think will be easy for people and they have a completely different interaction than you were expecting. I have a small example, which is we were building out in Process Playground, we were building out the way to build iterations.
Uh-huh.
And so the idea is that you would be able to make a copy of your current model and then in that copy make changes, but not change the original, right? And one of the screens that we had for that meant that we could make the copy. And our original thought was, well, they wanted to make a copy. Let's show the copy right away and everything will work as expected. And what was happening was people were clicking on something else and it was causing confusion. And something you thought was going to make people's lives easier, something you thought was going to be helpful, actually turned out to be the opposite. And then you learn something new and you make changes, you fix it up. And so after some of our user testing and our usability tests with that, we decided that we're just going to go with the other way instead. It'll be easier and people will understand it, even if we thought that the original way that we had built it would have been easier.
Karina, if there's one thing I've learned during this show, it's that you cannot be afraid to experiment because not all experiments work. And just because an experiment may not work, that's not a reason to be afraid to do it. That's continuous improvement. That's what it's all
Hmm.
about, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Now, Karina, another reason that people view you as an artist around the office here at MoreSteam is your contributions to the world of ice cream. Could you tell us all just a little bit about that?
I love ice cream.
Yes.
It's been a while now, but several years ago, I got an ice cream machine and I decided that I was going to make ice cream. And I started off making a vanilla bourbon ice cream to go with a peach pie. That was
Wow.
the first ice cream I ever made,
That sounds
but
great.
it was so good. But since then I have gone through like a whole spectrum of different types of ice creams. So I start with kind of, ones that you might find at the store. Got your mint ice creams, and I've done that three different ways. I've done it with artificial mint, I've done it with mint from the store, and I've done it with mint from someone's garden. So all different types of mints you can play with down there. Then you get into things that are a little bit more interesting that are in the middle. I'm thinking that that would be your vanilla bourbon. That would be, I made one called Protein, 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 which was chocolate protein powder with black bean brownies and peanut butter in it. So,
Wow.
all these
So
different
you
kinds of
that's healthy
interesting
ice
ones.
cream, right, Karina?
That's a
That's
healthy
healthy.
ice cream right there. Earl Grey tea is a pretty popular one I've made. So I've got some interesting ones in the middle. Then you get into the like stranger ones where I've done a Tikka Masala ice cream, where it's very similar to the dish chicken tikka masala, except took out the chicken, turned it into ice cream. It
How was
was
that?
okay. It was okay.
Experimentation, right, Karina?
Experimentation.
You probably heard when you were a kid, I scream, you scream. We all scream for ice cream. Well, I hope you're just as excited for this short break. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Our integrated approach featuring training, project tracking and execution, simulations, and statistical analysis empowers your team to create a culture where structured problem solving becomes second nature. Visit moresteam.com to learn more. And now back to my conversation with Karina Dubé. Getting back to EngineRoom, I know that when I go to, for example, MoreSteam has a website called Sigmapedia that has a whole list of continuous improvement terms, defines those terms, Lean Six Sigma terms, and I see terms like a Monte Carlo analysis and things like that. What kind of tools like that, like Monte Carlo or Wilcoxon rank sum, stuff like that? What's in EngineRoom? And I just threw out two tests that I don't even know if they're relevant.
Yep, those are there in EngineRoom. So we do have a Monte Carlo analysis. We do have a Wilcoxon test. We have several hypothesis tests, Kruskal-Wallis tests. We are also in the process of building out more of our advanced tools in EngineRoom. So we, over the years, we've decided to go down a route where we bring in more of our advanced features. So that means we have introduced a response surface methodology for design of experiments. We have introduced classification and regression trees. We have a response optimizer now that can handle both regression and design of experiments. We have built out destructive gauge R&R. So many
That's a
tools
big
that,
one.
yeah, we've got so many tools that we've been building out that are a little bit more advanced, and so we just want EngineRoom to be much more of a general purpose statistical tool than we had in the past. We want to expand.
I know that in the world of continuous improvement, it's important the concept of teams and collaboration and working together. How does EngineRoom allow that collaboration between team members who might be working on the same continuous improvement project?
EngineRoom does allow you to share your projects with other people in your organization. And so this enables you, if Dan, you and I are working on a project together, I can give you the single source of truth for our project, so that we are both able to collaborate and add our own studies to that project.
I hope if it's a project we're working on together, it's a project related to ice cream, Karina. That's the first thing I'll say.
I need to do some DOEs on ice cream. I think that's what I really need to be spending some time on.
If somebody is new to EngineRoom, what kind of training and support can they expect to receive? Because I imagine that's part of what you do, that training and support component to get people up to speed so that they can use EngineRoom really quickly, like right off the bat.
We have a pretty extensive help system that we've built out that gives you a lot of tutorials and understanding for how to do each of the different tools in EngineRoom. Otherwise, We do run demos, we have webinars, we offer lots of different methods for learning more about EngineRoom. When you are part of an organization, a lot of organizations will bring me in to help facilitate a demo to help get people started.
I know there's also on the MoreSteam website quite a few video tutorials. And if you listen closely, you just might hear my voice on one or two of those tutorials. So check those out on the MoreSteam website. Karina, you recently took part in a very well received webinar here at MoreSteam.
I did a webinar on machine learning and root cause analysis.
It was a really informative webinar, Karina, a great webinar. And I'm going to play some of that webinar right now. This is part of your introduction to the topic of machine learning and root cause analysis.
We'll do a quick introduction to machine learning. What is machine learning? It's the ability of computers to understand patterns and make predictions or decisions without explicit programming. So, what does that mean exactly? So, machine learning has three main goals. You've got one that is about describing your data. So, this is called unsupervised learning. This means that you have a bunch of data that you might not actually have a goal for, but the computer is trying to figure out how to group that information, how to describe that information to make sense of it. The second type is predicting. So this is called supervised learning. And generally, this means that you have a labeled data set with some sort of goal that you have in mind. The third type you have here is prescribing. So this is the idea that once you have information, you're able to actually make decisions and describe different actions that you should take based on that information. So, for root cause analysis, we want to be looking at all three of these, but in particular, we're going to be looking at the ability to predict. So, for example, can I predict the success or failure based on the inputs that I have been given? Or, said another way, given a data set that has been labeled with success or failure, which inputs help predict that success or failure correctly? So, we're going to talk about one specific machine learning algorithm today, and that is called the classification and regression trees. This is a type of machine learning algorithm called a decision tree, and it's used to predict categorical, or for classification cases, or continuous responses in regression cases.
I will put a link to the webinar in the show notes. Go to the MoreSteam website to watch the entire webinar. A lot of great information there. Excellent work on that webinar, Karina. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about your performance background in high school, the various musicals and plays you were in. Do you still perform at all? Do you still perform at all outside of work?
Well, not these days. I used to actually be a part of a Filipino school back when I was growing up. And as part of that, I got to perform as part of an ensemble, a music ensemble. And it's something that I miss. Of all of the things, whether it's musicals or drama club, it was the musical group from Eskwelahan Filipino that was a really big part of my life that I really miss. So,
Well, Karina, we are so glad to have you here at MoreSteam. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you would like to add before we end the show?
you mentioned earlier, Dan, that, how do you respond to feedback? And I just want to say I would love to hear feedback from anyone who is interested in using EngineRoom or statistical analysis. Check out EngineRoom, and we'd love to hear what you think.
Thank you so much, Karina. This has been a wonderful discussion, very enlightening. And one of the things I like to do here on the show is highlight the really smart, really talented people here at MoreSteam, and you definitely fall into that category. So thank you so much for joining us, Karina.
Thank you so much, Dan.
And thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Also, please go ahead and visit our website, moresteam.com, to learn about the software and tools that can help you solve problems, eliminate waste, and do things better. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more quality time with more steam. Thanks again.